Somewhere inside you, there is a frequency, not a feeling, not a thought, a frequency, like a tuning fork that has been struck once, years ago, and has never fully stopped vibrating. You didn't choose it. You can't explain it to anyone who hasn't felt it, and you've long stopped trying. What nobody tells you about this kind of connection is that the waiting isn't passive. It is active. Every single day, you are doing something, holding, adjusting, recalibrating, even when nothing visible is happening. That's not weakness. That's a very specific kind of endurance that most people will never be asked to develop. This video is not going to tell you to surrender and trust the universe. You've heard that. You've done that. And while surrender is real and necessary, it is only part of the architecture. What we are going to do today is go deeper. We are going to look at why the physical union between two souls of this nature is structurally, almost biologically, delayed, and what is actually happening inside you and inside the other person in the space between now and then. Because there is a mechanics to this, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There is something that lives in the body before it lives in the mind. It is not a thought you arrive at through logic. It is a recognition, sudden, wordless, almost cellular, that a particular person occupies a frequency that matches something deep inside you. You didn't construct that feeling. You didn't choose it. And despite everything that has happened since, you have not been able to dissolve it. This is where we need to begin. Not with fate or destiny, but with something far more precise, the nervous system. When two people share a deep energetic resonance, their bodies begin to respond to each other in ways that bypass conscious decision-making entirely. Researchers in interpersonal neurobiology describe this process as co-regulation, the phenomenon by which two nervous systems in each other's proximity begin to synchronize. Emotional proximity counts. It doesn't require physical closeness. The body reads the signal regardless of distance, regardless of silence, regardless of how much time has passed. Now here is the part that changes everything if you let it land fully. The soul that appears to be withdrawing is not withdrawing because the connection is weak. They are withdrawing because the connection is overwhelming. Their nervous system, shaped, most likely, by early experiences of loss, emotional unpredictability, or engulfment, has learned to read profound intimacy as a threat signal, not as comfort, as danger. The very frequency that feels like home to you arrives in their body as something their system cannot yet safely metabolize. So it does what it was built to do. It protects the person inside it by creating distance. This is not a character flaw. This is not indifference. This is a survival architecture that was built long before you arrived in their life. Understanding this does not mean you excuse the distance. It means you stop taking it as evidence of your own inadequacy. Those are two very different positions, and the difference between them matters enormously. On the other side of this dynamic lives a different nervous system pattern entirely. The anxious heart learned, early, that love requires constant vigilance, that if attention softens even slightly, connection dissolves. That safety is not a resting state. It is something that must be maintained through effort, through watching, through adjusting. So when the signal from the other person goes quiet, the response is not peace. It is activation. The body moves into a state of alert, scanning for what went wrong, recalibrating, reaching. Two people, the same resonance, two nervous systems pulling in precisely opposite directions, and yet both moving in response to the same wound. The fear that profound intimacy cannot be sustained safely. Carl Jung gave this a name. He called it the shadow. Not evil, not pathology, but the unintegrated, unlived parts of the self that we carry below the surface of awareness. The extraordinary and uncomfortable truth about a connection this deep is that the other person does not simply reflect your light back to you. They reflect everything. The wound you have not yet looked at directly. The pattern you have not yet named. The version of yourself you have been carefully, unconsciously avoiding. You are doing the same for them. This is not metaphor dressed as psychology. This is a precise description of the mirroring dynamic that makes this kind of relationship so simultaneously magnetic and destabilizing. You are each other's most accurate mirror, and mirrors, by definition, show you what you have not been willing to see. There is one more layer to this, and it comes from an unexpected direction. Quantum physicists have observed a phenomenon called entanglement, the behavior of two particles that, once connected, continue to respond to each other instantaneously, regardless of the physical distance between them. No signal travels between them, no message is exchanged. One particle shifts, and the other responds. Einstein found this deeply unsettling. He called it spooky action at a distance. And yet, it is real, it is documented, and it has never been adequately explained by classical models of physics. The parallel is not a neat spiritual analogy. It is a reminder that our model of reality, the one that insists two people must be physically together to influence each other's state, is incomplete. The inner work you do today changes the energetic field between you. The healing you choose, the pattern you interrupt, the internal shift you make, these do not stay contained inside you. They move outward. They affect the shared field in ways that no instrument has yet been built to measure, but that the body and the soul already know how to read. This is the architecture of the delay. And once you see it clearly, the waiting begins to mean something entirely different. There is a moment in the life of every oyster when a grain of sand enters its shell. Something foreign, something irritating, something that, by every logical measure, does not belong there. The oyster cannot expel it, so it does the only thing it can do. It begins to wrap the grain in layer after layer of a luminous substance, slowly, in total darkness, over months and years, until what began as an intrusion becomes a pearl. Remove the grain of sand and you remove the pearl. The irritant is not despite the beauty. The irritant is the mechanism of it. This is the shift. And it is not a comfortable one because it asks you to look at everything you have been calling painful and see it differently. Not to deny the pain. Not to spiritually bypass the ache of it. But to consider that what you have been interpreting as an obstacle in front of your destination may in fact be the road itself. The distance in this connection, the silence, the retreat, the inexplicable push and pull, has most likely been living in your body as evidence that something is wrong. With you, with them, with the connection, with the timing. The mind, when it is in a state of longing, reaches for explanations, and the cruelest explanation it tends to reach for is the one that places the fault inside you. But consider a different interpretation entirely. What if two souls of this resonance cannot sustain each other physically until both have developed the internal architecture to hold that frequency without being destabilized by it? What if the delay is not arbitrary? What if it is calibrated, not by a distant and indifferent universe, but by the precise requirements of what is actually being built between you? A foundation is always the least visible part of a building. When construction begins on a skyscraper, the first months are spent going downward, not upward, deep into the earth, into bedrock, to depths that seem excessive for what will eventually stand above the surface. No one photographs the foundation, no one celebrates it, and yet without it, everything built above will eventually fail. What is happening in you right now, in the waiting, in the excavation, in the pressure of an unresolved connection? This is the foundation work. You are being carved deeper, not punished, not forgotten, deepened. The capacity you are developing to love without possession, to hold space without collapsing into need, to want profoundly without demanding. This is not a consolation prize distributed to those who are made to wait. This is the specific internal architecture that makes a stable union possible at all. Because here's the truth that most conversations about this kind of connection carefully avoid. Two people who have not done this work do not create a sanctuary when they come together. They create a storm, each one's unhealed nervous system activating the other's, each one's wound calling forward the other's defense. What looks like union from the outside is, underneath, two people using each other to avoid the very growth the connection was designed to catalyze. The avoidant soul is not avoiding you. They are avoiding the version of themselves that your presence calls forward, the one that must face what has never been faced, the one that must feel what has been carefully, expertly numbed. That is not a small thing to ask of a person. That is, in fact, the hardest thing a human being can be asked to do, and it cannot be rushed. It cannot be argued into existence. It cannot be loved into happening before the person is structurally ready. Your role in this is not to pull them toward that reckoning. Your role is to arrive there yourself, so completely, so peacefully, with so little residue of desperation or need, that the frequency you carry changes. Not as a strategy, not as a technique designed to trigger a particular response, but because you have genuinely, internally settled into your own wholeness. Gravity does not chase. It does not reach or persuade or adjust itself to be more appealing. It simply exists with complete authority, and things fall toward it according to their own readiness. You do not become more gravitational by increasing your effort. You become more gravitational by increasing your depth. This is the paradigm shift. The pain of this journey is not evidence that something has gone wrong. It is evidence that something of profound value is being formed. In the dark, in the pressure, in the silence that feels like absence but is, in truth, the most active season of your becoming. The pearl does not form in open water. It forms inside a closed shell, in total darkness, under pressure, over time. And when it finally emerges, it is undeniable. There is a particular kind of intelligence that this journey demands. It is not the intelligence of strategy or planning. It is not the intelligence of patience in the passive sense, the kind that simply waits and hopes. It is something more precise than that. It is the intelligence of knowing where to place your attention, and why the placement of your attention is, in fact, the most powerful action available to you right now. What follows are not practices in the conventional sense. They are not morning rituals or journaling prompts, though those things have their place. These are shifts in orientation, changes in the fundamental angle from which you are perceiving this connection and your place within it. And shifts in orientation, when they are genuine, change everything downstream. The first shift is this: stop measuring the reality of the connection by its current form. There is a deeply embedded assumption that most people carry without ever examining it. The assumption that what is real is what is visible, that what is true must be demonstrable in the physical world right now, in this moment, in this form. And when the physical world does not yet reflect what you know to be true inside you, the mind interprets that gap as evidence of failure, as proof that perhaps you were wrong, that perhaps none of it means what you believed it meant. But an acorn is not a failed oak. It is an oak in its correct and necessary stage. The oak already exists within it, not metaphorically, but structurally, encoded in every cell. The absence of visible branches is not an absence of the tree. It is the tree in the form appropriate to this moment in its development. The relationship between you and your counterpart already exists. It has been real from the moment of first contact. The physical union is not the beginning of that relationship. It is one expression of a relationship that is already, in every meaningful sense, alive. When you stop requiring it to look a certain way in order to believe in it, you stop hemorrhaging energy into grief for something that has not yet arrived in its final form. You begin to inhabit what already is, and that shift alone changes the frequency you carry. Frequency is the language this connection speaks. It registers everything. The second shift is this: learn to receive your longing as information rather than instruction. When the ache rises, and it will reliably at unexpected moments, the nervous system's default response is to act, to reach, to send the message, to check for signs of movement, to recalculate the timeline, to do something that creates the sensation of agency in a situation that feels uncontrollable. This impulse is not weakness. It is the anxious heart doing exactly what it was trained to do, vigilance as a substitute for safety. But the longing, looked at differently, is a compass. It is pointing somewhere, not toward the other person, or not only toward the other person, but toward something unmet inside you. A need for complete belonging, for being seen without editing yourself, for safety within the experience of full emotional exposure. These are needs that you have the capacity to begin meeting for yourself, not as a replacement for the connection you want, as the construction of an internal home that is stable enough, warm enough, complete enough, that another person can actually enter it and remain. This is not the same as telling yourself to need less. It is telling yourself to source more from within, so that what you bring to the eventual union is fullness rather than hunger. Hunger in a relationship does not create intimacy. It creates pressure. And pressure in an already activated nervous system creates distance. The third shift is the most demanding, and also the most liberating. Release the outcome from your sense of identity. Somewhere in the architecture of this journey, for many people, a quiet and devastating fusion occurs. The outcome, the physical union, becomes entangled with self-worth. It begins to carry the weight of a verdict. If it happens, I am worthy of profound love. If it doesn't, something is fundamentally wrong with me. This belief does not announce itself. It operates beneath the surface, shaping behavior, coloring perception, radiating outward in ways the other person's nervous system detects without being able to name. When you arrive, genuinely, not as a performance of detachment, at the place where your wholeness is not contingent on their arrival, something in the shared field changes. Not because non-attachment is a technique that produces results, but because you have finally become what you were always meant to become in this process, complete within yourself, grounded in your own depth, unshakable in your own worth. Gravity does not need to be validated by what falls toward it. It simply is. And in being fully, quietly, entirely itself, everything finds its way to it in time. The physical union between two souls of this resonance is not something that is achieved. It is something that becomes possible when both people have reached a state of internal completion that allows them to stand in the full intensity of the connection without running, without grasping, without collapsing. That is why it takes as long as it takes. Not because the universe is indifferent, not because you aren't enough, but because what is being built between you, the invisible architecture, requires a depth of foundation that ordinary relationships never ask for. You are not waiting for someone to arrive. You are becoming the place they can land. And there is a profound difference between those two positions. One is passive. One is the most powerful work a human being can do. Sit with that. The ocean does not chase the shore, and yet it always arrives.